What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Jenks Island Podcast, the only NFL podcast where you can get your takes from a washed-up Division III cornerback. I'm your host, Grayson Jenkins, joined again by Ty McGee, good friend of the podcast, and Hammer himself is back after a long hiatus again. And in today's episode, we're going to be starting off our NFL draft preparation. The draft comes up, I believe, in like 9-10 weeks. Actually, maybe 11 weeks from today or tomorrow it'll be. So we're excited for that. We're going to get all the prospect videos out. This episode is going to be focused on the O-line of the draft. So it'll be interior and offensive tackles, with this group being a little bit weaker than years past. Last year, Hammer and I broke down all the tackles, and that was a good episode. But this year, it's a little bit of a shorter list. So we figured we would combine the two groups. Anyway, so the way we're going to do it is we'll each give our lists for these groups. We'll start off with tackles, and then we'll do O-line second. So for lists, let's start it off with one of the guests. Let's Hammer, you've been off the podcast the longest. Let's hear your list first.
All right, so for tackles, my top 4 tackles in this draft. All right, so we're going to go at number 4, we're going to go Zabel from North Dakota State. At number 3, we're going to go Membou out of Missouri. At 2, we're going to go Josh Simmons. And number 1, we're going to go Will Campbell.
Okay. All right. Ty, what about you?
Yeah, so I got 5. I'm sick of this Josh Conerly disrespect. So at 5, I got Josh Conerly Jr. from Oregon. At 4, I got Kelvin Banks out of Texas. And then 3, 2, 1, I'd go Membou, Josh Simmons, and Will Campbell.
Okay. Yeah, so I have similar lists in general. I mean, I got 5. I got Conerly. 4, I'm going to go Banks. If he stays a tackle, there's possibility that he could be moved to guard. Josh Simmons at 3 due to that injury. I don't think. I don't know. I think he'll fall a little bit in the draft order just because of his injury. At number 2, I'm going to go Armand Membou, and then number 1, I'm going to go Will Campbell as well. So I guess kind of bottom of the list. Hammer, you started off right. You said Zabel at your last list, and you're the only person that had him at tackle. So do you think if he goes tackle, kind of what are your thoughts on him?
Well, if we're doing 5, Conley's going to be my 5th. But
okay.
I know Ty wants to talk about him, so we'll go to Zabel. So Zabel, right, North Dakota State. He's played all 5 spots on the offensive line. I know it's only like 19 snaps at center, but hey, it still counts. So you got to love the versatility, right? Went to a smaller school. And then he went to the Senior Bowl, and he put on a show. He got named overall practice player of the week, against really good top competition. He showed that he can, hang with them, pass protect, this and that, at guard, at tackle. I think he's athletic enough. He's got a lot of experience that, I think you're going to try him at tackle first in the league, especially that's the most important position. So let's try this guy at tackle first. And then if he does fail, struggle a little bit, then you're going to kick him inside the guard. But yeah, I think he's my number 4 tackle. And the only reason he's over Conley is because the versatility. So I just think that just bumps him up a little bit. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't mind it. I think a versatile guy. I have on my O-line. When we talk about O-lines, I have a guy that, or the interior side, I have a guy that's kind of similar versatility, might have him move up some draft boards. But as far as tackles go, number 5 for both Ty and I, we got Conerly from Josh Conerly Jr. from Oregon, 6'4", 315. Ty, what are your thoughts on him? I know he's your guy. You're gonna hype him up a little bit.
Yeah, so not the biggest guy, but really athletic in space. I think that's a lot of what Oregon asked him to do. A lot of pulling, a lot of the screen game, really showed his athleticism. When it comes to pulling, I think he did a really good job of sealing off lanes and that second level. My issue with him in the run game, I think, is he doesn't really get a push, right? Like I said, he kind of creates those lanes, but he's not really, I wouldn't call him a road grader. He's not really running guys over, kind of, getting 1-2 guys, to that second level. In the pass game, I think his athleticism really helps him out a lot. I think he does a really good job of resetting when it comes to guys that kind of getting up in him. He does a really good job of resetting his feet and his hands. I think he's got quick feet, which helps him out a lot. But my thing with him, sometimes in the pass game, he just gets caught flat-footed. And so, against some of these bigger defensive ends in the NFL. I think of a TJ Watt or Myles Garrett. I think that's gonna hurt him. I think he'll get ran over versus some of these guys, the West Coast guys that he would play at UCLA, schools like that, not as big of defensive ends. So I have him at OT5. I think he's probably a late first round pick. He was a 2-year starter, only 2 sacks allowed. So, I think part of that is probably because they asked him to move around a lot in space. That offense is very quick throws, screen game, outside zones where the tackles are pulling. So I think that, if you look at him at the end of the first, maybe you're looking at the Ravens or the Vikings if they don't keep Ronnie Stanley and if the Vikings don't keep Cam Robinson, 2 other teams, maybe the Chiefs, they're desperate for a tackle and they're there at the end. He is OT5, so probably will be there. And then the Rams, I've seen the Rams, in a lot of mock drafts for him, just as kind of like a prospect that they can work with and try to make him into a better tackle and mold him. So I like him as an athlete. I just think he's got a lot of room to grow. And one of the things that, with him, I think he just probably was a bigger guy that, throughout his life could rely on his size. And that's why he's not really running his feet a lot in the pass game and the run game. But I like him overall. It's just at least an athlete.
Yeah, I that was the big note that you didn't really touch on too much, was just the development. I think that's the big thing for him, is just once he gets to the league against bigger guys, like you said, once he starts facing these bigger dudes, he's going to need time to develop the better footwork, things like that in the NFL. But if you pick him in the top couple rounds, you're investing a lot into him. You're going to get him coached up, and I'm sure
he's 21 too. He's only 21 years old. So if you take him at the end of the 20s, that's the type of tackle that you take a flyer on if you're a team like the Chiefs, right? A young guy with a lot of upside and athleticism.
Yeah. No, who did they take? They took a tackle last year, right? The rookie. Was it soon?
Yeah, Kingsley CMA too.
Yeah, Kingsley, and he didn't really pan out.
BYU.
Yeah, he didn't really pan out too well for them. So again, taking flyers, these teams are going to keep trying. The next guy, Ty, who did you have at 4 on your list?
I had Banks at 4.
Banks. Okay, yeah, we can talk about that a little bit. I mean, so if he stays at offensive tackle, Hammer, Ty, and I, we were having a big debate on Banks going into this video, and it's mainly because his footwork, things like that. Hammer doesn't like the way he lunges a lot in pass pro, things like that. There's a specific clip. I'll see if I can put it up, but there's a sack against Georgia where he gets pushed back a little bit. But in my opinion, I just think it wasn't really his fault. The sack, Quinn Ewers went back 11 yards deep, didn't step up early enough, and then the sack happened. So that was a big talking point for us going into this episode. But Kelvin Banks, I mean, he's 6'4", 320 pounds, and at tackle, I think it's a little tough for him, just the lunging, like Hammer said. But I think he's athletic enough to possibly move to guard. And I know Hammer is going to talk about him at guard a little bit. I didn't have him. I have him in the interior side, of the guard side, a little bit higher on my board. So I'll save our discussion for him until we talk about guard, the big discussion. At number 3, we had Ty or Hammer. Who'd you have at 3?
I had your boy Membou.
Okay, we can talk about Armand. Yeah, so Armand, I'm very, very high on Armand, right? I have him at 2. I was tempted to put him above Will Campbell even. When I watch his tape, I love what he's doing, right? He has a great low base. You see all of it. Okay. Smiling, everything like that.
I like him. I'm going to talk I'm going to talk good about him. I like him. He's just number 3 for me.
So for all of the listeners, Hammer's cheesing. They doubt this guy. They doubt him. But I think he could be as high as offensive tackle 1, a true offensive tackle 1. Because like we said, Will Campbell could possibly move inside in the NFL. That's a possibility as well. But Armand Membou, I think he's truly going to be an offensive tackle his whole career. I don't see him moving inside at all. On the outside, he has a great low base. Every single play, he's going to be in the same position when he's not hand in the dirt. Base looks the same every single play. It's really, really low to the dirt. It's lower than the tight ends on the outside, which is a great thing for tackles. You're attacking low right off the bat. He had 0 sacks allowed in 2024, 3 total. He had a really, really large improvement this past season, which was a little bit it was an outlier almost this season compared to others. So it could be tough to see if he continues that in the NFL or if he takes a step back. But he has a very solid base. He keeps his feet moving through blocks. On the run, I love his pulling. When he pulls out and he's going out to block, he just kills the guys on the end. Whether it be an end, a linebacker, corner coming in, whatever, he's killing whoever is coming off the corner. I think I don't want to say he will be moved into guard. I think it's possible just because of his agility, but I think where he will truly succeed in the NFL is at tackle, because I just think a guy that can control the bull rush like he does, right? Like his footwork, everything like that, very, very good in the pass pro and in the run game. So I think he's going to be put at tackle. And I'll open the floor to you guys to see what you guys think on him. Yeah,
my only thing is, and the reason that I think I'd put him behind Campbell is I think he's a right tackle. I don't think he's a left tackle. I think he's bound to play right tackle. And that's just a whole different game, right? Like a left tackle, that's your franchise cornerstone. That's the guy protecting your quarterback. Like, you take them high. The right tackle, those are guys that you take in the teens and the 20s. So, it's not even really a knock on his game. It's just the fact that, he's not going to be able to be a guy that you can put on that left side and protect your quarterback. He's just he's a solid player. He's a good player, but he's not a guy that you take it, at the top of the draft, in my opinion.
Yeah, in his career in college, he didn't play a single snap outside of right tackle. So I think that's going to be where he's at. Hammer, what about you?
Yeah, for me, I don't know what you're talking about doubting him. I like him a lot. He's my number 3. I'll read off a bunch of the stuff I have. The reason why he's number 3, like Ty said, he's only a right tackle. I don't think he moves to the left, so that makes him a little, less valuable. And then just the frame. He doesn't have the frame of a tackle. He's got the frame of a guard. He's a little undersized, but I like his quickness, his technique, pop on contact, good body control, awareness, climbs to the second level well, change of direction. He's nasty. He's got good strength. Like, he can move. He's athletic. He's going to do some freaky stuff at the combine. I heard that he could come in at like 18% body fat. And he reminds me of Zach Tom, right tackle for the Packers. Undersized, gets away with his athletic and his technique, a lot like Membou. Like, that's just how I see him translate into the league. And I have him going in my mock draft. I have him going number 13 to the Dolphins. I think he's the number 3 offensive lineman taken in the draft. So I'm high on him. I don't think he's better than the top 2 guys that I have.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I think 13. We said going into this, right, that we don't believe that a lot of these guys are like this class is a lot weaker than it was last year. We could see a lot less offensive linemen taken in the first round. So 13, number 3 O-line taken. It's not bad.
It's weaker, but I still think a lot of guys will go because there are a lot of teams that need offensive tackle. So it's just kind of one of those ones where teams have to take a shot on some of these guys. Banks and Conerly and Membou, higher than maybe they would in a regular draft, just because there's such a need for a lot of teams at offensive tackle.
Yeah, it's not a bad take. O-line, it's very, very valuable. Like we saw with the Eagles this year, you get a good O-line, you can do crazy things, and obviously they have Saquon that helps, but you can do crazy things if you have a very good O-line. Next, at number 2 for I think both of you guys, you had Josh Simmons. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts on him. Hammer, you're the highest on him, so let's hear your thoughts.
I like Josh Simmons a lot. I think he jumps off on tape. I think you just look at the guy and you're like, that's a franchise left tackle. He got injured this past season, kind of mid-October, tore his ACL. So that's definitely going to, drop his draft stock a little bit. Like, I think this guy probably is going to be the 5th, 6th, maybe offensive lineman taken off the board. In my eyes, right now, he's number 2. And if it wasn't for the injury, I think he's number 1. Really good athlete. He can move in a hurry. Finishes blocks, good range, powerful run blocker with really good footwork to go along with that. He's really smooth in pass protection. His first step is really explosive. He's got the anchor. And I would just say I think his hands can be a little inconsistent, lunges at times. He committed a lot of penalties in his college career, 26 of them. But he's also a really young player, and he made a transition to tackle when he transferred to Ohio State. So it's also like a new position, and, he's going against really good competition. So I like that he's young, and, there's a lot of stuff to work with there. And he's got the same birthday as me. So he's got a hit. He's got a hit, but I like him a lot.
Ty, what do you think?
Yeah, I like him too. And I think the thing I like about him the most is his position versatility. Like, he's played left and right. Granted, left this year was only 5 games, but played right at San Diego State. I kind of like too that he was a small school guy, transferred into, the Big 12 and showed that he can hang with some of these guys too. So Very similar to Hammer. I think he jumps off the page. And just the fact, again, an offensive tackle in one of these bigger conferences, anytime you see a guy in the SEC or the Big 12 kind of dominate and do it on both sides, left and right tackle, I think that, that speaks a lot to NFL teams because they know they can take that guy and kind of place him wherever they need to. I do think he probably will fall, to the fifth tackle taken, depending if you say Zabel's a tackle, maybe even the sixth, late first, early second. But I just think his versatility is so rare in this draft class. I think all these other guys are strictly left or, in the case of Armand, right tackle guys. I think Zabel obviously has that position versatility, but we saw him at guard in the Senior Bowl, so I think that's where he ends up. So I just like, that he could play left, he could play right. He's been a small school guy. He's been a big school guy. He's kind of done it all, and organizations love to see a guy who can mesh like that. So
he's got the highest ceiling, in my opinion. Like, he'll be the fifth guy taken, but he's got the highest ceiling at anyone.
It's bold. Okay. I would say the number one guy has the highest ceiling here, but I don't mind the take. I want to hear that. So Ty, really, really high on Will Campbell. I going into this, I kind of talked to both of you and I was like, Will Campbell, when I was watching his tape, it wasn't like, I wasn't wowed like I was with Talise Fuaga or Joe Alt. Right. And obviously in my eyes, I think both of those guys are better than all of the tackles this year. But anyways, Will Campbell, number one, in both of your guys' or all three of our lists. What are your guys' thoughts? Ty, you can go first.
Yeah, I think Joe Wall, to that point, I think he's a generational guy. No guy in this class is even going to touch that. I mean, there's not even probably a player, maybe a few guys in this class that would even touch the level of generational type of player that he is. But back to Will Campbell, I love this guy. He's super young, 3-year starter. A 21-year-old as a 3-year starter is insane. That's just high value coming in. Big body, 6'6", 323. In the pass game, I think he's got great feet, despite his bigger stature, 6'6", like I said, 320. He's super quick and athletic. I think he flies in space in the run game. I think similarly to Conerly. Conerly's, a smaller guy in comparison to him, and I think Campbell moves just as well as him. I think he does a really great job handling the bull rush despite his smaller arms. That's going to be a big thing at the combine, seeing, does he come in at that average of 34-inch arms, or is he below that? That might sway some teams to play him at guard, but then you flip on the tape and you just see how he handles the bull rush, kind of resets on some of those, and just, he just eats guys, and in the pass game and in the run game. And just the last thing on the pass game, I really love how his eyes work. When he sees a defender drop out, he's always looking to find someone else and deliver on some of these combo blocks. And I mean, some of these, he is just depleting guys in the pass game on some of the chips on the interior. In the run game, he's exactly what Conerly's not. I think he's an absolute road grader. There's times where he's getting his hands on 3 to 4 guys in clips. And that's just insane, right? Like, he's pulling, he hits a guy, he's getting to the tackle, or excuse me, the linebacker, then he's at the safety. I mean, the guy just flies around the field, consistently pancaking guys, like I said, in the second level. I really, really think, he's going to be a dominant offensive tackle because he's huge and he's super athletic. I think he's played a lot of football. I know one of your issues with him, Jenks, was the amount of sacks he allowed. I think he allowed 5 his freshman year, none his sophomore year, and then his junior year, I think it was 2.
2, yeah.
So he's a guy that's showed development. That's what that tells me. Despite the 5 sacks in year 1, he had a 24-game streak without a sack allowed, which is an absolutely insane stat playing in the SEC. Like I said, it's some teams might be swayed depending on his arm length. But I think when you look at teams like the Jets, the Jags, and the Panthers, I think it's 4, 5, and 6. Those are teams that are in need of an offensive tackle. I don't think the arm length will truly be a concern for them. I think Hammer's kind of gone on this point where I think Vrabel will want to invest in the front line. So I think Campbell would be a good fit there. The Jags could use a tackle because they got rid of Cam Robinson at the deadline this past year. Need to protect protect your guy, Trevor Lawrence. And then the Jets, you know, they lose both their tackles. I know they have Olu, but, you know, you have 2 offensive tackles and you lost Moses and Tyrone Smith. So bringing in two guys like that to maybe block for, you know, maybe a rookie that you draft in the second round, I think would be big. I love him. I think the only knock on him really is the short arms. I think he's always moving his feet. I think he's running people over. And I think he's just, to me, he is the closest you're going to get to Joe Alt. He is super duper polished. I think Joe Alt came in as an all-pro type of tackle. I think Will Campbell comes in as a Pro Bowl type of tackle. Like that's my opinion on Campbell. I
love the way you broke him down. Like, spot on. He's the most NFL ready, athletic ability, agility, awareness, finishing blocks, jumps off the tape. And yeah, I think when you said the short arms, I think he's like a Taylor Decker like comp, because I was like a big like knock on Taylor Decker, and of course Decker is one of the better tackles in the NFL. And yeah, I think he's a top 4 pick.
Yeah, I think the big knock I had on him when I was watching some of his tape was when he was passing, he would overset almost, and the inside move got him a couple times. And for a Saints fan, watching Trevor Penning, it kind of gave me some PTSD. So there was like a little bit of a little flashback there. But no, I think he is definitely the offensive tackle 1. I was fighting for Membou a little bit in my mind, but the level of competition that they played is a lot different there, and so I can't put him above.
I was gonna say that too. He's young and he's battle tested. Like, he's gone against Verse, he's got against Turner. He had a really good game against Turner from what I remember watching the tape. But like, he's battle tested and he's 21 years old.
Yeah,
so, and the difference between him and Membou too is, you know, Membou's playing right tackle. I think that's the big difference in comp, right? He's playing right. Will's playing left. You know, they both play in the SEC, but obviously playing on that left and right side is huge. You know, you're playing just different levels of competition.
Next, so we'll move on from the offensive tackles to the interior O linemen. I guess we'll kind of go the opposite order in lists this time. For me, so at number 5, I got Donovan Jackson. I liked his tape a lot. At number 4, I got Tate Ratledge. Number 3, I'm going to go Gray Zabel. If he is moved to guard, I would put him at guard number 3. At number 2, I would have Kelvin Banks Jr. And then at number 1, I'm going to have Tyler Booker personally. So that's my list. Ty, who do you got?
Yeah, I had at 4 Donovan Jackson, at 3 Gray Zabel, 2 Tyler Booker, and at 1 Tate Ratledge. I know both of you guys had Ratledge a little bit lower, but he flew off the tape to me. I loved his tape. I can't wait to get into that. So,
Hammer, what about you?
For me, at 4, I had Tate Ratledge. 3, I had Donovan Jackson. 2, I had Kelvin Banks, and number 1, I had Tyler Booker.
Okay, so I think we all have Booker at 1 or up there. So we'll do at 1 and 2. 1 and 2. Sorry. So I'll go first. I will start off with Donovan Jackson. Donovan Jackson. I mean, he had 2 sacks allowed this year, 5 total, and the sacks, I believe they were both at offensive tackle. So he's a really interesting guy, right? He started off at left guard for Ohio State, was playing really, really well this season, then got moved to left tackle when Josh Simmons went down. Yeah, when Josh Simmons went down, he got moved to left tackle, and it was a big shift for him, but he played really, really well. Obviously, we saw what Ohio State did this year. He was a big part of that. He was probably the saving grace of that team. For him, he stonewalls defenders when he gets his hands on. His flexibility to play both positions, I think, is going to be really, really huge for him in the draft. Honestly, it probably moved him up big time. Like he could have been a round 3 kind of guy, and he possibly could have moved up to round 2 with his performance. That depends on other positions, how the positions are going off in the draft anyways. I think he's solid and not great at like everything. I think that's kind of my take on Donovan Jackson. I think he's a solid player all around, but he doesn't have any major cons or major pros in my eyes. I think he's kind of just like your average guy. I think you can kind of plug and play him at those positions and expect average performances. I think he needs to develop his hand placement and footwork a little bit more. And then I think he stops his feet at times and blocking early. He stops his blocks a little bit earlier than I would like to see. If you're a guard in the NFL, I want to see you be a ferocious kind of guy, if that makes sense. Yeah, I want to see you go in every play looking to kill the guy that you're going up against and put him in the dirt every single play. And I think Donovan Jackson, to me, seems a little bit in the mindset of he made his block. He can kind of let go if the plays by him and move on. So I think that was something I want to see a little bit more from him in the future as well. Ty, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think the position versatility was a big thing for me with him. I think, like you said, he kind of reminds me of Josh Conerly, where, he gets there, he makes the block, and then he's just kind of done. Probably, again, another bigger guy that could just rely on his size up until this point in his career. But again, guard and tackle, that's huge, right? We don't really see that besides him and Zabel. Truly playing both of those positions, right? We have a couple guys that we think maybe could bump inside. So that's big. I think, anytime, again, when you're playing at these big schools like Ohio State and you prove that you can play both left guard and left tackle, I think that's huge. I think he's a day two guy, but I wouldn't really, when I look at the guys above him, I think there's a clear gap between them and him.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Hammer, what about you?
Yeah, he stepped up and played left tackle when they needed him, but I don't think he's a tackle in the NFL at all. I think he lunges too much. I think his foot speed's not up there. He's got stiff hips. Quicker rushers kind of beat him all day. He's not a tackle. Maybe if he gets more work, he could play out there. But I think he's really a guard. I think he's a safe player too. I think you know what you're going to get. I really like him as a run blocker. He's a day two guy for me. And yeah, that's really it.
Yeah, maybe we kind of hit on everything else. Next we'll go Ty, your guy. We'll go Tate Ratledge. I know you have him at 1. We both had him a little bit lower, so we can break him down really quickly. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I like Tate Ratledge a lot. I think he's probably, maybe at best a late day 1 guy, but probably a round 2 guy. I wouldn't even say day 2. I'd say round 2 for me. 3-year starter, only 2 sacks allowed in his career. At guard, you're kind of allowing less sacks, right? Because you're not less on that island, but I think that's still pretty big, right? 3 years, 2 sacks. I think he, had one of the better sack to game ratios in the country. Pass pro, I think he has a really, really strong base. He's a bigger guy at 6'6". I think he moves well in space despite his larger stature. I think he does a really good job of, eyeing and using his eyes to kind of scan stunts and twists. That's what you want to see out of guard, right? As guys stunt and twist, like where can they help? Can they help the center? Can they help the tackle? You don't want them missing guys that then get through to that back. You want them to be able to pick up stuff like that. I think he's a really effective double teamer, very similar to Will Campbell. I think he does a good job of realizing, okay, there's nothing coming towards me. I can help in and chip in on this. I think in the run game is where he really, really succeeds. I think he's going to be an absolute road grader. He's got great leg drive in the run game, very similar to where in the pass game he moves very well when he's pulling. Overall, I just think consistently he was the one Georgia lineman I saw on film that was setting the line of scrimmage, not getting blown back in both the pass pro and in the run game. I think he was constantly creating a push. We've talked about a lot of these guys, their leg drive. I think he is probably, right with Will Campbell for me, with some of the hardest workers, best road grader offensive linemen in this class. I would like to see him maybe lean a little bit less. I think sometimes he does lean, which makes him susceptible to some push pulls. And he only played right guard, so he does lack a little bit of that versatility. I think at guard it matters a little bit less. I think he could play left guard. But when I look at in the NFL, I think of, guys like Quinn Miners, right? He's a right guard. He's kind of calling the shots in Denver, a bigger guy, road grader. I think of him kind of similarly. I could see him fall into maybe Dallas because Zach Martin's a free agent. Maybe Detroit, they're losing Zeitler, or the Ravens and the Chiefs. I think both of them, could use an offensive lineman like this too. I think of teams that are run heavy, right? Teams that want to run the football and need a road grader. I think all these teams like to run the ball. I think that's where he succeeds more, is in the run game, but I don't think he's a bad pass blocker by any means.
Hammer, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would just say, he's a little bit down my list because he is 24 years old. Some teams don't like that because by the time his rookie contract's done, he's 28, 29 years old. So I think that hurts him a little bit. For me, I think he's a day 2 guy. But he's got good experience. He's a 3-year starter. I like his awareness. Like you said, he finishes blocks, strong hands. He's definitely more of a run blocker. He's got good frame for the guard position. And then, pass protection. I think the foot speed just not really there. But the one positive I do have is the scheme versatility because of that he can play in a lot of different schemes because of Georgia's pro style offense. So I think that helps him. But yeah, he's a day 2 guy for me.
Yeah, I don't mind. The big pro I have for Ratledge is he plays with a lot of aggression. Unlike Donovan Jackson, who I was just talking about, he comes in and he is trying to put every guy in the dirt or kill every single guy that's going line up against him. And for that reason, I think he is a good guard and he could be a good guard in the NFL. I just think these guys above him are more, I don't want to say they're even like a lot better than him. I think the gap between him and some of these guys isn't as big as we're making it out to be, but I just think the guard class is pretty close in general. At number 3, I have Gray Zabel, and I know Hammer talked about him at tackle a little bit, so I'll talk about him at guard. I think for him, he came in to the Senior Bowl being a tackle, and he goes to the Senior Bowl and just absolutely dominates as a guard in all the practices. And he just looked really, really solid at that position, was making a lot of good blocks, whether that be on the pull and pulling as a guard or going to the second level as a guard. He really was doing well in that position. He even said himself that he's comfortable with playing center in the NFL. So if there's a center that needs to go off the board early, it could be him. Like he could be a first or second round center. I don't see him going that early. I don't see him going the first. I think a second round, maybe the third round if he falls that far. But I think day 2 is going to be an appropriate place for him. But he's going to be an interior guy in the NFL, I believe. He has a great base. And I think he has the shorter arms that Will Campbell has as well. So that's a little bit of a knock on him on the outside. And competition is a question mark anytime you have a smaller school kind of guy like him. So I think that kind of bumps him down the board a little bit as well.
Well, I already said it, but I'm just going to go back circle because you just said your piece. I think he's early day 2. I think he could be late day 1 because of the versatility. And I think the competition questions are kind of put to bed after the Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
You saw him go against competition. So I don't really think that's the question anymore. And yeah, I could see this guy getting taken over Simmons. And I love Simmons. We all know that. But yeah, I think he could be a day 1 guy, to be honest with you.
I think he could be a top 20 guy, honestly. I think he has the ability just because, what he proved at the Senior Bowl, he had an outstanding performance there. Again, the versatility. You like to see that out of these small school guys, right? The ability to play kind of any position. I think Quinn Miners came in kind of like that, right? The ability to play center and guard was kind of big for him. He was a day 2 guy, but definitely a smaller school guy, but also had a lot of success at the combine, or excuse me, at the Senior Bowl as well. So I don't know. I think it depends on how desperate some teams are, but I could see Zabel, sneaking up a little bit higher than even end of the first round. Maybe top 20 guy.
Yeah, definitely depending on the combine as well. How he does at the combine could be huge for him. If he performs really, really well in comparison to some of these other interior guys, he'll move up the boards quick. He could definitely get up into that first round pretty easily. At number 2, I have Kelvin Banks Jr. So we can talk about him really quick. I know which one of you guys really dove deep into Kelvin Banks. Was it
Hammer?
I remember Hammer.
I think it was me. Was it me?
Yeah, I think it was. Kelvin Banks is a really intriguing guy simply because, like I already said, we debated about him a little bit for tackle or interior. So Hammer,
let's continue that, and let's continue that for the audience.
Okay, let's continue it.
So you say your piece at tackle.
At tackle, I just think the big piece for you guys was like this Georgia film, right? He's looked slow on the outside, things like that. I think he's very athletic on the move when he's pulling, things like that. When I watched film immediately, that jumped right off the bat is him going to the outside or second level on the move. He looks really, really athletic there. And I think that's huge anytime you're looking for a tackle in the NFL. The only thing that I really noted when he was doing that was he got a little bit unbalanced. And you guys talked about that. That was your big knock on him at tackle, was his balance. lunging, things like that. That could be a knock on him. But with his success at tackle in college at Texas, I think he could be a tackle in the NFL. And if a team picks him there, I wouldn't be surprised at all. So I had him a little bit lower on the tackle list, but I think he could still play tackle in the NFL.
Yeah, I think he'll get drafted at tackle. I mean, honestly, like there's mocks at him at 10 to the Bears, right? I think he will get taken. I do see him as a tackle. I don't think he'll actually end up at guard, but I kind of see him like an Evan Neal kind of guy, right? A guy that gets drafted high that doesn't have a lot of success. I think to add on to all the points that you had, that you made about our kind of knocks on him, I think he does overset at times, right? Earlier we were talking about Quinn Ewers having an 11-yard drop. Well, how the hell is he getting sacked if Kelvin Banks isn't taking a huge drop as well? So I think that's another knock on him that I didn't see as much of a concern with Will Campbell, because I do think that he was able to reset a lot of times. I do see that as an issue with him. I think you turn on that Georgia tape too. Outside of him just getting beat, he's consistently the guy that had help too, right? So I think they had a back or a tight end on his side a lot, chipping. I know he had Michael Williams, but if you're going to have a perennial top 10 offensive tackle, a guy who's going that high in the draft, you would hope that you could put him one-on-one on an island, right? Will Campbell, he's one-on-one on an island. Joe Walt, he's one-on-one on an island. Kelvin Banks, in that game, he was not one-on-one on an island. He had a lot of help, a lot of chips, and I get that, right? But in the NFL, if you're going to have a premier offensive tackle, you need to put him on an island, because that there's somewhere else on that offensive line that you probably need to help chip. So that's my huge knock on him. It's just he's not going to be a guy that you can stick out there and he'll be your guy. Maybe you try him at right tackle, maybe you try him at guard. But if you stick him at left tackle long term, I don't think he's got what it takes.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't disagree, especially like with the top 10 pick thing. Like I don't think I could argue that I don't think any of these picks are like a top 10 pick. Like usually offensive tackles we'll see go high because they're really valuable. Like last year, all those tackles could have gone top 10. Hammer and I talked about that a lot, but I don't think this group is nearly as good. And I think the top 10 pick, like all of them could be lower than top 10 picks if there weren't so many.
But even despite the pick, right? If you just take the pick away, still, that's not what you want out of your left tackle, right? You don't want to have to be helping him every time that you're playing, one of the better edge rushers. And Michael Williams, no knock on him, but he's not going to be a top 10 edge rusher in the NFL. So if you end up playing Myles Garrett or TJ Watt or even a Nick Bonito, you can't have to chip him every time.
Yeah. Look, for me, I take one look at him and I'm just like the frame and everything. I think he's just too big and he just doesn't have the body control. I think he's a guard. He, like Jenks said, he can move up to the second level and this and that, and you could do that at the guard position. But having him on the islands with the body control and his footwork and foot speed, I just think he's not like athletic enough, to really do that. And the Georgia tape wasn't good, but I just thought like overall the whole tape, he just looked really slow to me. The Georgia tape, he's going against, 2 first rounders, maybe a first rounder, second rounder. And it wasn't the best. And it's just one game. He had some good reps, but a lot of it, he was getting pushed around. And I don't think that's what you want to see from a guy who people are saying, right, he's the number 2 tackle in this class. To me, I think he's a guard. I think that's just where he fits better.
Yeah, and pushed around by Michael Williams too, who's not the biggest guy either, is a little bit concerning because he is more of a slender edge rusher, almost a Nolan Smith build.
Yep. Same thing like Walker. They're not big, massive guys.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
So if you're getting bodied around by those guys as a larger man yourself, I don't think that's a good sign.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely understand the I understand the discourse for sure with him. Next at number 1, I got Tyler Booker. I think he's the best prospect right away at guard. He's 6'5", 325 junior, allowed 0 sacks this year, and he's an anchor. He's really is an anchor on the inside. He's an Alabama guard. That's like when you think about teams that you want an O lineman from, you think Alabama right away. Like they're one of the top teams you could think of. When he's there and he's dominating at Alabama, I think that's huge for him. Like I said, he's an anchor. His athleticism for his size is really, really solid. He's always looking for work. The one play that I can think of right off the top of my head, they're playing a smaller school, so it's not great competition or anything, but he's kind of standing there. No one's rushing in his lane. and he sees like this nose tackle kind of jump up looking like he's going to bat down the ball, and he immediately goes over and shoves him over flying through the air. So it shows that he's always scanning the field and looking for players to either put his hands on or hit in game. On adding on to that, I think he does a great job with pulling, which is essential for an NFL guard. Penalties were a little bit of an issue for him. And then I think due to size, he can struggle against quicker pass rushers. And especially in the NFL, that's going to be tough. When you're facing some of these defensive tackles that can take 2 steps and they're already past you, that's going to be tough for him. And I think that's going to be his biggest drawback going into this season. I think he needs to improve his base a little bit as well. When he's every play, you see him getting a little bit high. And I think that's something that is a little bit of a knock on him. And I think that's something he can improve, but that's a relatively quick fix going into the NFL. NFL coaches will get that out of him really quick. So that's my thoughts. I think he's a solid all around guy. I think he will be the first interior O lineman taken outside of like Gray Zabel if he's taken first because he's versatile. That's my idea. What are your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, I think he's a huge guy, right? He's obviously an anchor, like you said. I think he's probably one of the biggest offensive linemen in this class. I do think he probably needs to lose a little bit of weight, though, because I think he kind of lacks that foot speed. You talked about that a little bit. He's not the most athletic guy. And at guard, you don't have to be the most athletic guy, but I think he definitely needs to slim down a little bit. He'll have a lot of success in run-heavy offenses, obviously, because Alabama's a run-heavy offense. I think a team like the Ravens, right, very similar, Jalen Milroe, athletic quarterback. I could see a fit there. Like I said, I do have the concern about, his size. I think he's a little too big. I think it's nice to have a huge guard, but I just think he's a little too big because his feet are a little slow, maybe lose a little bit of weight, increase that quickness. But I do think he probably is the top true guard taken off the board.
Yeah, I agree. Hammer, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, he is big, but I love the size. I mean, the physical tools, the frame, the long arms, he's got massive hands, and he's just built like a tank, and he explodes off the football. He's a downhill run blocker. Great, he just pops guys, and I don't really know where to put this guy. I think it's tough to say if he's going to be day one because, you don't really know how teams value guards. I could see him going late day one. I want him to stay away from Detroit. I don't want to play against him. But I like him a lot. And even when I looked him up, there were like a bunch of videos that came up of him talking and stuff. And, I think he's really well spoken. I think he's a good leader from what it sounded like. Like he's a lot of good character in him. So I like him a lot. He's young. He's 21 years old too. And land in Detroit. Yeah,
Hammer, like you said, like I feel like he's definitely like an early round 2 kind of guy more than late round 1. Obviously it depends on like kind of where teams are looking at guards in this draft, but I think like early round 2, I know he's been mocked to the Saints a couple of times with Kellen Moore coming over, looking to be more of a run focused team possibly, and utilizing Alvin Kamara. Maybe they add Genty, which is possible under Moore. And then you get a left guard because we need a left guard. Our O-line is solid when healthy at all the other positions, but we've had no depth and left guard's really a huge need. So I could see him going to the Saints possibly at pick number 40 would be a good mock for him in my eyes. I think that was all the guards. Did we miss anyone? I think I think that was everyone. So, I mean, this offensive line class is definitely weaker than prior years. I think it's a little bit closer, I would say, closer in competition for the guards, especially the tackles are a little bit of a drop off after the top 3, I would say. But I think it's a solid class overall. It just depends on where we're seeing these guys taken with a lot of good defensive players in this draft class. It'll be interesting to see the value kind of shift around this year in comparison.
Yeah, and offensive weapons too, right? And a lot of running backs that we'll get into, some top heavy at the receiver position, deep at tight end. So, and there's teams that need quarterbacks. So some of these guys, might end up falling a little bit further back to teams that are at the end of the first and the end of the second, like the Chiefs that need some help with the offensive line position.
Yeah. So I'm excited for the draft. I think we'll get next week. We got interior D linemen, which is a really good class, and we're excited to break those guys down, especially as a Saints fan who needs a defensive lineman. Hammer, you were about to say something. What's up?
No, I would just say this offensive line class is definitely not as good as last year. But the thing is, there's still probably going to be 5, 6, maybe even 7 guys taken in the first round because the Eagles just put on a showcase on how you win a freaking Super Bowl. So that puts all these guys should send like the Eagles, I don't know, a gift basket or something, because the Eagles boosted all these guys' draft stocks. Yeah. And that's a fact. So, I think we're going to see a good amount of these guys taken in the first round, including, a guard like Brooks.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mind the take at all. I think it's solid. Ty, do you have any closing thoughts for the episode?
No, I just, I'm excited to get into the interior D-line next week. I think there's a lot of really good guys out there, deeper class than this interior offensive line and tackle. So, really excited to get into the big hogs next week.
Yeah. No, I think next week we have them. And then in a couple weeks, we're going to start free agency predictions as well with prospect things. So we'll get a lot more content out for you guys as a podcast. So I'm excited for that. Hammer, do you have any closing thoughts?
No, I would just say, these next 2 months are going to move along really quick, with combine, free agency, and then draft before you know it.
Yeah. So it'll go by quick. Hopefully the winter is kind of drawing too far out. I hate the cold, and I'm ready for it to start warming up for spring. So draft is coming up. It'll be an exciting few months for the podcast, and you guys know where to check us out every week at Jenks Island on wherever you get your podcasts, and all social medias at Jenks Island as well. We will see you guys next week.